And I'll tell you guys actually a funny story about this game. So both my opponent and I made, I think, some very serious mistakes in our preparation. In fact, I believe we made two of the most common mistakes that you can make when you're kind of managing your openings and preparing. So I didn't have a lot of time to prepare for this game. I think I only had like, actually that's not true. We had a couple hours to prep for the game because the first round pairings were released early. So we had a few hours, and I remember I was able to find my opponent's online account on chess.com. That's usually my process. At some point I'll just make a video about this because I imagine it will be useful for people. But usually I try to find someone's online account, then you go to openingtree.com, you put it in, you look at their repertoire. Because a lot of people, they will just play their tournament repertoire online, right? And you just kind of want to see like what they're usually doing. So I found his account. I saw, he played like thousands and thousands of games, and I saw he played a bunch of blitz games, many games with this exact setup, this English approach: c4, g3, bishop, g2, and then to my surprise, he kind of just like repeated pretty much what he always does online, like in our classical game. I couldn't find a lot of tournament games where he had played this way. He did a few, but it was odd because he essentially just like repeated the stuff he always kind of plays online, and it didn't seem like he was totally like prepared to actually play it. So I go with like my usual kind of King's Indian setup here. I like keeping it flexible because if you commit the knight to f6 too early, it lets white play d4. And if white were to go for like the Botvinnik system or something with e4, then I definitely want to be able to play e6 and knight g7 in this kind of position. So I like this setup. White plays a3. I went e6. This is all pretty normal. Castles, knight g7, rook b1, castles, b4, b6. And this is a very normal way for white to play. But then he goes b takes c5, which is definitely not a great decision. Because after black goes dc, black just gets really nice control over the d4 square. And I think black's position is already possibly even slightly better. Bishop is coming to b7. We get knight f5. And yeah, white has very little on the b file. I think black is just doing really well. But this move, this b takes c5, was actually not a surprise for me because like I saw that my opponent had already, like every time he reached this kind of position where he goes like rook b1, b4, and black plays b6, almost every game I saw he was playing b takes c5. And in almost every game that I analyzed, like I checked the games with the engine, it was like not the best move. It was like a mistake or dubious. And yeah, I realized that this guy just like, he just does this every time like in this position. And I think this is a pretty common thing where people, you play a lot of blitz games online and then you don't check them. And then because you've just played the same stuff over and over again, you just assume it's fine. And then you just do it, in like an actual tournament game, even though it's like not a great decision. Like I think b5 might be a little bit better here, or, bishop b2 also playable, but yeah. So he kind of committed, I don't know, I think a pretty big sin. And I've done this too, where it's like you just play some opening online, and then in blitz it's like sometimes you get punished, sometimes you don't really remember, and then you don't bother to check it, and then it turns out you're just playing something dubious like the whole time. So this was my round 1 game. This is from the 1000 GM Las Vegas Summer Super Swiss, which is a pretty strong open tournament. There was a good number of players in the field, something like around 60 or 70 if I remember correctly, and most everyone was very strong, like above 2,000, 2,100 FIDE or so. So first round I'm playing a player named CS Rahesh, who was around 2165 FIDE, but these days you don't really know with anyone. Like 2150 FIDE, they could be 2300 strength, 2350, like you just have no idea. So everyone is very, very good until proven otherwise. So I was, of course, very, very happy to get this position. And I was still in book, actually, for a couple moves here because he basically kind of followed like what he usually does: bishop b2, d3, queen d7, queen c2. Like he had went for this setup in a bunch of games that I found, maybe in different move orders. Rook a d8, and I saw in a lot of games he went for this kind of move, knight e4, trying to trade off the bishops, and I had planned to go e5 here, which the engine shows as like being a good move in a bunch of positions. And the point is just to take space. Now the bishop on b2 feels restricted, and black is going to play f5 to kick the knight, and I get this nice d4 square. Knight comes to d4, and yeah, black just starts taking tons and tons of space and already standing quite a bit better. So that was kind of my prep, but he went rook b d1, and this is where like my mistake in preparation came up, because at this point, okay, I'm doing great. Like I prepared the line. It's move 14. Black is slightly better. You know, what more could I ask for, right? But what I failed to do was like I didn't really analyze the position from like a human point of view, which means like I didn't understand like what I'm playing for and what the plan is and what I should be trying to do. Because I was just kind of looking at it, you know, quickly, because of course maybe he could play something else. I want to look at other stuff. You can't analyze things forever, but yeah, I was mainly just trying to look for concrete ideas, like what if white plays this move? What if white plays this move? How should I react to this? But I really wasn't thinking about like what black is actually trying to achieve in the position. And already here, this is officially like my first move out of book. Like I know I have a decent position. I know the engine says black is slightly better, maybe even clearly better, but I actually still wasn't sure what to do. And I considered basically two moves here. The first one was e5, and the second one was knight d4. And I rejected knight d4. I think I'd probably consider other moves, like maybe knight f5 as well, but I didn't like knight d4 here because I thought white takes, I take, and yeah, I wasn't sure how to evaluate this position. We actually get some kind of reverse Benoni structure, where white's now the one that's like playing the Benoni. Bishop takes b7 I don't think is possible because of d takes c3 here, where white has too many pieces hanging. So white would have to play like knight e4. And yeah, I wasn't sure how to evaluate this position. I wasn't even sure if black is better. I've played a lot of Benoni positions, you know, with reverse colors, and yeah, it's tricky. You know, I honestly just didn't know. So I ended up rejecting this one and playing e5 instead. And e5 to me felt thematic, and also was the move that the engine would always suggest in all these lines, like, oh, e5, 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 trying to take space. But here e5 is actually kind of a mistake, or at least it gives up black's advantage, because now my opponent found very nice move e4, and all of a sudden black is basically losing the space advantage, because now white is just getting this huge knight d5 move, and just like that, actually black doesn't really have much. So I can go knight d4 now. This is what happened in the game, but after takes knight d5, I think white is basically doing fine. I'll show you guys the game. I mean, white was from here totally okay, and then started to even be better at some point. So what I should have done was play this move knight d4. And yeah, the mistake I made in the preparation was that I just didn't really analyze the position enough to understand, like, this knight d4, this is something that black wants to achieve in a lot of these positions. And this e5 move, it's actually kind of a specific idea that's really in response to white's knight e4 jump. Where if you notice, when white goes knight e4, black plays e5, of course white can't then play e4, right, and deal with this. So this is why this e5 move is kind of working in this position, but not just on its own. So that was kind of my fail. You know, sometimes you prep the position, but then you don't quite understand what exactly you're playing for in the structure. And usually that's more important than actually knowing like a specific detail about a position. Oh, if white tries this move, then this is like a cool trick in response, or something like that. I think it's much more useful to understand where you want to put your pieces, what kind of structures you're aiming for, what kind of exchanges you're trying to achieve, and just what your overall strategic goal is in the position. So yeah, so those were our kind of two mistakes in this game in terms of the preparation. My opponent just kind of repeating the same old like online blitz play that he's always used to, and then me just kind of superficially checking it and not really analyzing it too deeply.